Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Rebel. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I thought this was interesting how it opens. Obviously, we have, Cruz with his children, Mateo and Carmen. And it seems like he's going to dig up Sharon's body, and then we get like the 12-hour rewind. And obviously he's gathered his kids up, and they're like, "Oh, what's he gathering up for? Like, why are you guys in my house?" It's like, "Oh, you have a key." They're asking about tea, and asking me for tea in the house that's mine that you broke into. And he's like, "Yes." So kind of like we get a little bit of a dynamic of kind of seeing what the ebb and flow is. And this is an interesting ebb and flow because it's without Sharon, so we kind of see what their new dynamic is. It probably was always like this, just adding in Sharon, which I think is actually pretty dope. We actually get our first Sharon scene this episode. But going through it, Cruz is basically telling his kids that he needs to exhume Sharon's body because the only valve they're aware of that, it has to be in someone that someone more hasn't already taken out, and it's like this is the only means of checking her valve to see what's going to happen. What happened to it. It's the only one that can be examined. It's because obviously for Cruz this is so important, which obviously his kids have reluctancy. Mateo's a little bit more open to it, but obviously Carmen's just and I love every time Carmen's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go throw up." I'm like, does seem like she might be pregnant, how she keeps constantly throwing up, but you're thinking, well, maybe she just her anxieties are getting the best of her, so maybe that's all it really is. But it is this kind of back and forth about whether or not to dig her up or not. Especially when Rebel gets involved and finds out wait, what? Because, and then Ziggy finds out too. It's like, well, you're going to have you're going to exhume, dig up, Aunt Sharon. Because the reason why this hits Rebel so hard is because we get that scene with Sharon and it's her kids are fighting. This is 2.5 years ago. And for her, it's that my kids, they're mad and they're just using housewarmings and house wine and stuff like that as an excuse. But she knows what's really at the core of it, and she has Rebel promise her because for her, it's no one's talking about it. No one wants to talk about it, and it's not an easy subject to talk about, it's because it's not like she's dead, especially even Rebel being like, no, you're gonna be fine, you're not dying, you're not gonna die. And it's for Sharon, it's she feels it, and it's she probably wants to believe that, but she probably can't. She's I have to prepare, and my family needs to be prepared. And so for her, it's my kids are going to argue. She's I know that she wants her family to stay together because she knows that Cruz is going to isolate. The fact is that the kids are going to call him and ask him out. He's like, "No, I'm fine. But it's in actuality he's not. So you got to promise me that you're going to basically keep my family together, that you're going to not let him just isolate, that you are going to get him, put himself out there and date again. I mean, obviously wait a couple years, but promise me." And even then, Rebel couldn't initially, but she was eventually "I promise." And even Cruz was "Who are you talking to?" And she because she was so caught up in the memory, she was kind of. And we kind of find out later on why that is so important for her to not have him dig up Sharon. And I thought it was so beautiful, how that came together. Because for her, it was if you dug up Sharon, it took a lot for me to kind of pull you out of your shell, pull you up after all of that. And if you dig her up and have to put her back in the ground, she was worried that he was going to backpedal, that he was going to shut down again. And it's that's not what Sharon wanted. I made a promise to her that you and your children will find some means of kind of living your life, not ridding yourselves of joy. You live your life, So I thought that was just such a beautiful thing. And that's the sad thing too. It's and it's actually even sadder when you actually think about it, because Rebel has to kind of be there for them, but maybe by being there for them, in turn they're being there for her. Because I was Rebel doesn't really have someone kind of helping her with that. She kind of had to carry that. But I think maybe that's a part of just who Rebel is, because she is such a strong personality, because she is such a strong person in her own right. But I think maybe you can make the argument. It's tough when you have to be strong for everyone. And sometimes, you might not just have enough strength left for yourself sometimes. That's one way I feel you could look at it. I don't know if that's necessarily the narrative they would go with, but, I think that's a tough thing in its own right. But I think it's also because Rebel is so strong, because she's so used to no, I'm giving my all to this person, I'm going to give this, I'm going to give that. She never gives it any less than her 100%, So obviously she's talking with Misha about because Misha kind of agreed with everything, and it's whoa, what are you, Frankenstein? And she's no, I'm more like Frankenstein's monster, because she's the one that was kind of saying if Cruz did this, like she'd be the one to kind of examine it and everything. But it's like apparently Stonemore is throwing like part of like some heart event, which obviously the messed up irony behind it, because even like even Rebel compared it to like Cruella de Vil. Interesting timing, because there's literally a Cruella movie that came out today. That literally it'd be like Cruella like trying to like raising money or like, you know, for like a dog animal shelter or something like that, you know, the irony behind it. And, you know, she was asked, it's like, oh, because Rebel knows she's not going to be able to get in front of a lot of people because Stonemore won't let her, but she thinks, wait a minute, I could use this to my advantage, because she was asking Misha, like, oh, can you? And Misha's like, no, I'm not in the, because it's like, oh, do you run? And it's like, no, like, she has something where she's like, no, I can't, so, because Rebel wants to use it as an opportunity. He's like, a lot of Stonemore people are going to be there and wants to ask about Jacob Duncan, Mark's brother. It's like, right, because he's their next best step, because he had his brother stopped him from getting the heart valve, and yes, they had the recording, but it's inadmissible in court, so that has to be their next move. Obviously, I'm also skipping over the fact is like all that's going down, but there's also like Lana's in the hospital, she's good. I was kind of worried things were going to be worse than what they were, but luckily they're not. Like I said, that still potentially could tiptoe down that, but I'm sure Lana's very like, but then like probably getting only like the bare medicine she needs. She'll probably like. She probably won't get the drugs just because that could be a slippery slope. I brought that up last episode. We don't see that come up this episode, but you know, so I don't know. Like I said, she's probably getting like the bare minimum. But obviously, Lana takes this personally because she didn't see Angela coming. She looked into Angela, this and that, and it's like, why couldn't I find anything? I did the best I could. But Rebel's like, no, I know you did. Like, don't worry about it. And so her ex, Nate's dad, ends up coming in and being like, okay, so I can't look any deeper unless you said she's there. So you're scared for your life. That it's like, oh, no, like if I run into her, because Lana's like, nah, if I run into her, she's the one that should be. It's like, but Rebel's like, no, she's scared for her life. It's like, good, because I did run some information on her. There's no fingerprints. There's no nothing that basically this woman's a ghost. So it's like, that's why because Lana's really good at her job. That's why she couldn't find anything. And then Benji shows up, and obviously Lana's just like, get out, because it's like, you hired this woman. He's like, I had nothing to do with that. And he constantly has to defend himself the entire episode, being like, I had nothing to do with this woman getting hired. And Rebel's kind of reluctant to believe him, but her other ex is kind of like, no, I believe Benji. Because for Benji, it's like, is she okay, you know? And that's the thing, like, he is willing to cross some lines. He can be a bit scummy with what he's willing to do. That obviously becomes a conversation later on. But it's like doing this, putting Cruz through that, like getting him close to a woman just for her to be used against him like that. It's like, I would never do that, you know? So Rebel's just telling him, like, just come back later after Lana's cooled down, so maybe everything will be okay. But obviously Cruz is upset, like, and even Rebel being like, that's why this is so personal for you. Like, it was already personal, it got even more personal, because it's like, for him, it's like, I can't let Angela be the woman, like, she was the first woman I got close to since Sharon died, and it was like, she manipulated me. This case is so important to me, why it's so important to me, and Angela, I got close to her, I cared for her, and for her to basically be stabbing me in the back like this, it's extra motivation, and it's pushing him to be like, I have to. And even later on, he's talking to his kids, it's like, I need you to stop arguing for like 5 minutes, because for him, it's like, because obviously it's a conversation of, if you exhume mom's body, would we lose? And it's like, yes, there's a chance we still will lose. But for him, it's like, no, we're going to win. We need to win, because this is too important, because everything's falling apart. Obviously, he has had to let go of a lot of his staff, because he doesn't have the money to take care of them. And like also like sending Mateo to like paying for like his school and everything. It's like, if he loses this, he'd have to sell the house. And like, but you're going to sell mom's. It's like, no, I'm going to win this case, get the money necessary to keep everything afloat, so I don't have to sell your mom's house. But also, it's like, this case is too important, because it's not just about all this other stuff. It's about the victims that are involved in this. It's also about, you know, Sharon. So there's so many driving forces for Cruz in this, like why he feels the need to get Sharon exhumed. Obviously, they also went to court, and I thought it was so interesting when like Luke is talking, and she was like, "What? I didn't hear what you said." I was like, "Oh, is she?" I thought at first when that happened, when the judge was like, "Wait, can you go back?" I thought she was going to bring up like, "Oh, like she was having some issues, and eventually Rebel would have to." I mean, I'm sure that turned into like a whole conflict of interest type of thing, but I thought like it was going to be she's having some issues and Rebel decides to help her type of thing. I figured it was going to be that. It's like, I was surprised when it's like, oh, no, the Luke thing is coming back to bite him in the ass. It's like, she's like, oh, right. And she's like, I kept thinking, like, where have I seen you before? Restaurant? And he was like, the video. She's like, the video. And it's like, he's like, I'm so sorry. It's like, not his fault. It's like, yeah, I'm sure he didn't mean to send that to me intentionally. But she's just staring at Luke the entire time. So he's kind of screwed in that department. So for Luke, it's like winning his case is too important because it's not just about, like, oh, winning the case. It's also about restoring his reputation. Like, he still has to suffer the ramifications of his ex, using revenge porn against him like that. So it's like, that's why for him it's like, I gotta win. But then when it comes down to it, he's bringing up ideas to Benji. Benji's like, sorry, can you go back? He's like, honestly, like that air guitar video, like you were making the same motion, so I got distracted. It's like, honestly, if we go to court and you're there, that's all people are going to see. So for him, it's like, okay, so either I kind of let you go in this regard, or we could go down the other route, because he was saying there were two paths in front of him. We can basically put you out there, you distract everyone, and I can't be blamed that if anything happens, that, because basically for him, it's like a middle finger to Mark, because he kind of hates his client right now, because it's like, yeah, I'm kind of bound to work for you, give you the best I can, because also if he screws this up, it can screw up his own reputation in his business, but he's also really pissed at Mark right now, because it's like, right, you embedded someone in my family's life, my circle, which includes his crews, which includes Rebel, which includes his sister Lana. It's like, and now my sister got hurt because of that. So for him, there's a part of him that's like that. But it's like, if you were me, what would you suggest? And he was like, Dad, I'd sit out. And he's like, hey, right, thank you so much. Oh, good conversation. He's like, thank you, sir. So it's basically Cassidy is moving up to be like the main chair, his second chair, in this. So Luke kind of got put back, which, obviously, there was also Lana's digging into, she was supposed to be looking up stuff about Gibson because, once again, so many moving pieces. I love that whole cute interaction between, like, Mallory, Zig, and Grady. Once again, and it's something I've talked about before, which there's kind of a little bit of a rub on this, but it's like, there's a little bit of an asterisk beside it now, but Grady, that character turned around for me. Like, I don't agree with, like, him getting upset with Rebel the way he did, kind of getting divorced behind her back like that. Yeah, but then he kind of, like, shows, like, oh, he can be a good guy when he wants to be that. He can be, So it's like, it makes you go, I was like, oh, screw this guy the moment after the first episode, but it's like, the preceding episodes, I'm like, all right, Grady, you won me back. Once again, asterisk, we'll get to that asterisk later on. So, but, like, obviously, like, it's like, oh, how's your dad doing? It's like, right, oh, you have, like, my dad has the biggest crush on your dad. It's like, no, I don't. Just tell him, tell him I said hi, how buff I look. And it's like, I like that. But obviously Mallory ended up getting expelled, and she's potentially losing her scholarship. She's losing her scholarship because of something that happened at school, and that's why she's homeschooled now. And it turns out one of their friends is also in the same situation. And they end up bringing this up to Rebel, because basically the coach, he's a former Olympian named Gibson. Well, it turns out he's also someone that Cassidy had issues with back in the day too. But basically, like, the moment they informed Cassidy was what, she decided, like, oh, hell yeah, I'll help take down that Gibson bastard. Because they're trying to get, justice for, Mallory and her friend after what happened. Because it's like, Mallory's black and their other friend is Latino, so it's kind of like they're it's kind of looking like, oh, like, why they were singled out, because everyone else on the team is white, and it's like they were kind of let go, but these two in particular, because it was about like an aftermath where things kind of turned into a brawl or whatever. But it's like later on, even the girls on the team were like, no, we were all involved. It wasn't just like these two in particular. So when Gibson was kind of confronted, it was about like, oh, whoa, like, why did you do this? He's like, whoa, I'm not racist. It's like, yeah, but it just looks a little, but for him, it's like all about like, oh, consequences and stuff like that. And Cassidy brings up one of her issues with him. It's like, the fact is, I got like disciplinary action against me for beating up the dude that raped my friend. And it's like, I was standing up for someone, but no one bothered to, like, really hear the other side of the story. And, like, basically, I could have gone to juvie if my mom hadn't fought so hard for me. I would be at where I am right now. But he tried to sway it to be like, well, obviously, consequences do. Like, consequences happen, and maybe they kind of work out for the best. Look at you right now. He keeps trying to justify it. Because, obviously, caught up in this moment, he's like, it's like, well, give me a chance to say something. And Rebel's like, go ahead, because you don't have anything. And he said, he's like, well, I don't have to stay here and listen. But obviously, like, Grady and Mallory's dad are kind of blocking him. He's like, whoa, no, we're just having a friendly game without, an actual, no ball between us. But it's like, Rebel's just telling him to listen. It's like, the fact of the matter is you're not listening to their stories. So, and ultimately they're able to convince Gibson too. That, and for him, it's like, right, I didn't realize what I was doing, because he went with he saw from his perspective, he wasn't willing to kind of see their stories, because they were like, yeah, it's not as, like, we were just trying to congratulate and give them like a high five for the great game and stuff like that. But, it's like, oh, that person like punched my hand hard, and that just sent stuff spiraling. So it's not like it was an intentional thing. And even Gibson being like, right, you're right. It wasn't his decision, but his word went a long way into getting them expelled. So it's like, right, he's going to, it's like, no, not just words, action matters. So he's like, right, I'm going to fight hard to get, it reversed, and also Rebel's telling him, like, just like take some like anti-racist courses to kind of realize, like, right, there's something in your head or whatever that you might not realize it. Maybe it's there subconsciously, but yeah, like a lot of your actions, kind of dictate that. So Rebel's like, okay, now for me kind of clearing this whole situation up, you kind of owe me a favor. So she has Gibson running it, and obviously it's like, he's like, don't worry, I got this. I was an Olympic athlete, and it was like, she's like, you're an alternate. So, and she's like, run, jackass, run. And obviously she's antsy back and forth, and he's like, nah. You have Grady being like, I don't worry about it. You'll eventually get what you want. And she's like, what's that mean? It's like, yeah, you'll do whatever you need to do to get what you need, no matter, despite, how much it hurts the people you care about. And she's like, so you're the people that love you. And she was like, oh, so you're one of the ones so you love me, huh? And it's like, okay. But it's like, yeah, they're still having their ups and downs, but it's like, right, it's like, I will pay back, Ziggy's college fund. I mean, once again, it's like, she offered it to me, so obviously he's kind of taking jabs at her throughout the episode because of the whole Ziggy's college fund. But luckily at the end, Gibson did win, and it's like, yeah! And so he gets on stage, he brings his team on stage, including Zig, and she goes like, yeah, the heart valve, yep, this is this and that, like, explaining it to everyone, being like, if you can tell us where Jacob Duncan is. The fact is, he's probably surfing waves somewhere. He's just I'm sure Mark made him disappear with everything going on. It's like, right, I need you out of the way so no one can bring you to testify. I'm sure Jacob probably does feel some reservation, but he's hiding out somewhere. And the question is, does he feel bad? Because he might feel worse than his brother is, because for his brother it's like, this company means a lot. Like, maybe it is the best of intentions, but how far he's willing to go shows he knows there's fault on him and his life's work and everything. I don't think it is just about the money. I think initially there is some core aspect of his family, what runs in his family, and what the heart valve can mean for him and families like his, and what it can mean for people. But he doesn't want to admit wrong, because maybe putting out there despite the risk and everything, he was like, no, this is going to help so many people, and now it's just all about self-preservation at this point. You want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Once again, that one particular episode made me want to kind of go, maybe he's not as bad as I think he is, but then there's also like the Angela angle kind of just makes it worse for him. So it's like, when you want to take one step forward, kind of thinking, oh, he's not that bad, he does what he does, and you want to take 3 or 4 steps back, being like, nah, this guy's a douchebag. So there's that element to it. But luckily, because that happened, they were able to, one of the chemists who had worked on the valve, his husband was like, yeah, my husband's like just riddled with guilt. Guilt. Like, obviously, like, he's not sleeping well and stuff like that, just because he's just got so much guilt about all of this. So I know that actor, I'm trying to remember the last thing, I've seen him in many different things, Heroes, but I want to say the most recent one was like The Magicians. That was a couple, I don't know, I think, did he pop up in season 3? I don't remember. Obviously, he first pops up, I want to say the actor's name is Leonard, right? I believe his name is, but you've seen him in a multitude of things. So I was like, hey, that's dope. But now that they've got that, Rebel was able to kind of convince Cruz not to. And I do like that it's like he did have his family support at the end, because he was like, I'm not going to do this unless, like, I've got all this other people's blessings and stuff like that. I don't need your signature, I need your blessings. And for him, it's like, I will not dig up your mom without your blessings, so they kind of agreed to it. And obviously it's like, right, should we sing like a prayer? It's like, no, like mom's favorite poem, And it's like, I thought that was actually a beautiful poem of like, right, like, if I ask you, like, whose life is more important, mine or yours, and you say yours, and I'll say, is it mine or yours? And I will say mine, and you'll walk away not knowing because you are my life. And it's like, I thought that poem was like beautiful. I was like, oh, like I didn't have context for it, but I was like, oh, that's beautiful. But luckily Rebel showed up in time to stop Cruz from having to do it. So it's like, okay. But then the good news kind of rolls out more because it's like, and Carmen's like, and I'm pregnant. She's like, I thought so. It's like, well, yeah, like I didn't want to like bring up the news on the day we were digging up Mom, but it's like for Cruz, it's like I'm going to be a grandpa, and he's telling Rebel, it's like I could have handled it. You know, it's like if we had to, you know, I would, and we had to put, you know, Sharon back in, I would have been able to handle it. And she's like, and Rebel's like, I'm sure you would have been able to, but I think it's a good thing we don't have to find out, you know, that, you know, Sharon gets to say where she is, and it's like, you know, because for him it's like, the reason why he was saying that was because it's like, I know she's not in that ground, she's with me, she's everywhere I go, like she's always going to be with me, so I'm good. I would have been able to handle it. But like I said, I think it's a good thing we don't have to find out, at least now, at least for right now. Who knows if we'll have to circle back around and she will have to be exhumed. Who knows if that'll turn into something later on where it's like the other side finds out, wait, you're getting her body exhumed, and that turns into issues later on. Who knows? Obviously, a lot of other interesting elements. Obviously, Luke kind of confronts Cassidy about the fact is, wait, you helped them with that Gibson thing? It's like, yeah, your mom used him for a whole stunt, and now it's kind of working in your favor. I thought you were not helping your family. It's like, I'm not. It's like, well, basically, you have to choose a side. Like, you kind of have to win. I need this win. At the very least, stop helping your family. So she's like probably thinking like, she's kind of, because obviously it's a conversation Lana had walked in on about like, oh, like, yeah, we can, because like they're basically digging up dirt on like Helen and Maddie, because it's like if we dig up dirt on them, because they're going to be the core crux of the thing, is basically if we can kind of besmirch them a little bit, it's like, oh, and that's the effed up thing of like, oh yeah, what if she ended up having an abortion or something? And it's like, Jesus, like they're trying to use whatever tricks they can to like dig up her past to be like, oh, she did this, and trying, because there's no direct correlation they can make right now to Maddie's baby and the heart valve. But then Lana overhears this. It's like, Jesus, really? And then Luke's like, yeah, I'm gonna go to a different office. She's like, yeah, on your way to hell. Because it's like, even I was like, yikes. That was, I mean, I'm sure those conversations happen when you're just that intent on winning. But it's still kind of like, that's not cool at all, bro. You know? So, which, speaking of Lana, she went to see Benji about, you know, finding Angela, which she couldn't, but at first she was like, yeah, but part of my reasoning for thinking before that was like, I don't know what you're actually going to do to that woman when you find her. It's like, I'm just going to basically have her arrested for all the crimes she committed. Because obviously Benji is feeling guilty. It's like, he didn't hire this woman, but for Lana, it's like, your name is on the building. I know you've done all that you've done. You fought to get to where you are. But, you know, eventually it's going to come to a point that there's only so far that plausible deniability of not knowing the shady stuff that your clients are up to, like, and how much you can live with that, and, like, you know, how much will it be worth that and having your name on the building if you're willing to let your clients cross such lines. So that's definitely going to be an interesting thing, because like he does feel bad about the cruise thing, but not enough. Like he threw it out there as a possibility, but the fact is he still went with road one of like, right, I'm moving Cassidy up. It's still kind of like, how can you work with someone that did this whole thing with Angela? I guess Cassidy never met Angela, so she never knew, or at the very least she's in the dark about the whole Angela thing, only because she didn't recognize Angela when she ran into her. So there's that avenue. Which, speaking of Angela, she came in there and she was smug as hell. Like, the fact that she walked in there and like, oh, hi, Lana. It's like, and she tried to compare herself, being like, oh yeah, like, you know, we both do what we do. It's like, did you take acting classes, or in like something, like, were you in like acting classes in high school or something like me? Like, but she's saying like, oh yeah, like, we get to be someone else, we get all the intel, but obviously Lana's like, I do my job like that, I'm thorough, but I would never do something like what you did with Chris. She's like, yeah, I did kind of feel bad, like the whole widower thing. She was like, it was kind of high. I was like, Jesus, like, she like has no compassion or whatever. It's just like, for her, it's just kind of, it's a job. And then basically she was saying at the end of the day, like, you're going to stop looking for me, you're going to leave me alone, because if you don't, you stop coming after me, I won't come after you. Because she's really good at her job, she's dug up a lot of dirt on them, and being like, oh, like for her it's like, oh, because I have big plans. I was going to turn Rebel's life inside out, turn it upside down. Because did you know that Grady actually has an 8-year-old son? It's like, oh, interesting, and kind of walks away. She's like, oh, I will take one of those pastries, and she's walking away, kind of licking her lips. I'm like, wow, that woman is evil. She is the evil version of Lana, and once again, that just pisses Lana off because it's like, I didn't see you for the snake that you are. Like, I'm supposed to be good at my job. This is about protecting the people that are important, her family, and like, I kind of, for her, it's like, this is personal because I didn't see you for what you were. But that in itself brings up some interesting stuff. I was like, okay, at my initial thought, like, it took me like a minute or two processing that ending. But at first I was like, oh man, Grady, you know, I was thinking like, well, maybe the question comes down to, does Grady know about this child? Maybe it's a thing of like, right, he wasn't aware of it, you know, but then it clicked in my head. What did Angela say? 8-year-old baby. If I'm not mistaken, didn't they bring it up at the beginning of the series that Rebel and Grady have been together for 10 years? At least they've been married for 10 years. Probably dating for longer, obviously, but it's like, so that means Grady had some indiscretion at some point in time. Maybe he didn't know. Well, I love, like, you know, that is like the cute word for indiscretion. Let's just say he had an affair, so maybe it's a thing of it happened and he didn't know there was a baby product. Regardless of it, which is once again so interesting. He's throwing all this shade towards Rebel for picking her job and stuff like that, but she never cheated on him, and it's potentially saying that he did. Like, even if he didn't know about the child, which maybe there's a good possibility he didn't. Now it's like, I have a kid, an 8-year-old. Oh, and it's like, now Lana's probably in a position of like, do I tell Rebel? I have to. Like, she's my best friend, like, former sister-in-law, but we're still tight. Like, but also, like, what other dirt did Angela find out that not only could ruin Rebel's life, because it's like, while she's basically picking up, especially because her and Grady are in a place where they're trying to repair their relationship. Yeah, there's some bumpy roads, but I'm sure Lana, I think I call a second of the promo. Once again, I try to avoid watching those as much as possible. I just want to make sure the next episode was going to be next week. That's the only reason why I kind of typically watch promos at all, just to make sure the dates and stuff like that for the next episodes. But I think we see Lana confronting him, so that's definitely going to be interesting where that goes. But like I said, I just immediately turned it off after I saw, like, okay, next step Thursday, that's all I need to know. Because I think the whole point is, like, with this information out there, it might keep Rebel distracted. Granted, even when things were kind of tough with Grady, like earlier in the show, like, she was still doing her job anyway. So it's definitely going to be interesting as they, like, you know, look into this chemist and everything. Once again, does Lana bring this up immediately to Rebel? Does she go to Grady first and tells Grady to tell Rebel and see what he does? A lot of things to be considered. Because obviously, you know, Ziggy was already pissed, like, wait, you're getting divorced behind Mom's back. She's kind of upset with that. But also, it's like finding out, wait, you cheated on Mom? Like, that's going to be a whole issue too. Maybe he'll probably make the argument like, oh, I wasn't sure, I made a mistake, it was a one-time deal, plus the whole thing of you guys being separated, and then the whole Angela thing, so it makes that a little too. So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.